At 79, Barry Gibb finally tells the truth about Roy Orbison. Barry Gibb was born Barry Allen Crompton Gibb on September 1, 1946, in Douglas on the Isle of Man. He's one of the most famous and long-lasting people in music history. He was the second of 5 kids born to Hugh and Barbara Gibb. From when he was really little, everyone could tell that Barry was meant to make music. He was naturally good at making up songs and melodies, which made him special. By the time he was just a teenager, he was already starting what would later become the famous Bee Gees. Barry moved with his younger twin brothers, Robin and Maurice Gibb, when their family went to Redcliffe, Queensland, Australia, in the late 1950s. That's where the boys first got noticed as singers, performing around town and practicing their harmony singing, which would become their special sound. Barry quickly became the main creative person in the group. He wasn't just the lead singer, but also the main songwriter. His high singing voice would later become famous, but even in the early days, everyone could tell he was amazing at writing songs that made people feel things and remember the tunes. In the 1960s, the Gibb family moved back to England to find bigger chances in music. It was in London that the Bee Gees became famous around the world for the first time. Songs like New York Mining Disaster 1941, To Love Somebody, and Massachusetts made them one of the best singing groups of that time. These songs showed that Barry was great at writing songs that told stories and made people feel emotions, and he could connect with people of all ages. The 1970s saw the Bee Gees completely change their style, and Barry was the main reason this happened. When disco music became popular, Barry's high singing voice, heard in hits like Staying Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love, became the sound that defined that time period. The group's songs for the Saturday Night Fever movie soundtrack made them cultural icons and secured their place in music history forever. The soundtrack sold tens of millions of copies around the world, won Grammy Awards, and forever connected the Bee Gees with the golden time of disco music. Barry's soaring voice and amazing songwriting ability made him one of the most recognizable and respected people in music. In 2001, the legendary Bee Gees finished a huge chapter in music history with the release of what would be their last studio album, Islands in the Stream. This project, filled with the group's special harmonies and emotional storytelling, represented the end result of decades of groundbreaking work that had already changed the world of pop, disco, and rock music. But for Barry Gibb, the end of the Bee Gees as a recording group didn't mean the end of his creativity. It was in many ways the beginning of a deeply personal and richly collaborative new time. The next year, in 2002, Barry went into the studio with none other than Michael Jackson, a friend and fellow icon of the music industry. Together they recorded the single All in Your Name, a song that came from mutual respect and a shared desire to use music as a voice for unity and love. The track served as a touching reminder of the friendship between two of the most influential people in modern music, mixing Barry's unmistakable warmth with Jackson's dynamic energy. Fans celebrated the collaboration as a historic meeting of legends, one that showed Barry's ongoing importance in a rapidly changing music scene. As the decade went on, Barry focused on more intimate and personal projects. One of the most touching moments of this period came when he sang backup vocals on Living in the Rain, a single released by his son, Steve Gibb. This gesture was not only an act of musical support, but also showed Barry's deep pride in watching his children carry forward the family's artistic legacy. At the same time, Barry himself continued to create new songs, releasing heartfelt songs such as Drown on the River, Gray Ghost, and Daddy's Little Girl. Each of these tracks showed a different side of his artistry, whether it was storytelling rooted in Americana, thoughtful ballads, or tender expressions of being a father. In 2007, Barry further established his role as a respected elder statesman of music when he joined the judges panel on American Idol during its 6th season. For millions of viewers, seeing him guide aspiring performers was nothing short of inspirational. His presence brought not only credibility, but also warmth and wisdom as he encouraged young talents to chase their dreams with the same passion that had carried him from humble beginnings in Australia to international superstardom. This role introduced Barry to a new generation of fans who may have only known the Bee Gees by reputation, allowing them to see firsthand the humanity and artistry of the man behind the hits. Beyond the Bee Gees, Barry also showed an extraordinary ability to write and produce for other artists. He wrote hits for legends such as Barbra Streisand, Dolly Parton, Kenny Rogers, Diana Ross, and Dionne Warwick, among many others. His versatility as a songwriter showed that he could write hits across genres: pop, country, R&B, always with the same sensitivity and musical genius that defined his own performances. Despite personal tragedies, including the heartbreaking losses of his brothers, Maurice in 2003 and Robin in 2012, Barry continued to carry the Bee Gees' legacy forward with grace and strength. He faced these difficult times with resilience, often speaking of his brothers with love and reverence, while also continuing to honor their memory through music. His ability to persevere and remain committed to his art has made him not only a celebrated musician, but also a symbol of resilience and dedication. Barry's career has spanned over 6 decades, and in that time, he has sold hundreds of millions of records, received countless awards, and been recognized with some of the highest honors in the music industry. In 1997, the Bee Gees were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Barry himself was knighted in 2018 for his services to music and charity, becoming Sir Barry Gibb. These awards only highlight what fans have always known, that Barry Gibb's contributions to music are timeless and immeasurable. On August 22, 1966, Barry Gibb, then a rising star who was beginning to gain recognition as a member of the Bee Gees alongside his brothers, took a major step in his personal life when he married Maureen Bates. At that time, Barry was still a young man in his late teens, dealing with both the demands of a music career and the responsibilities of married life. Maureen, who had been part of Barry's early world before the family's fame skyrocketed, represented a connection to a quieter, more grounded lifestyle than the one he would soon experience as an international celebrity. Their marriage, however, was not meant to last. The pressures of Barry's rapidly growing career in the music industry, combined with the challenges of adjusting to married life at such a young age, put enormous strain on the relationship. Despite their efforts to make it work, the union proved to be short-lived. After less than 4 years together, Barry and Maureen divorced, bringing an end to this chapter of his early personal journey. Although their relationship did not last, it marked an important growing period in Barry's life, as he was learning to balance the intense spotlight of fame with the complexities of love and personal responsibility. Only a few years later, Barry Gibb would find lasting love. On September 1, 1970, his own 24th birthday, Barry entered into a marriage that would define the rest of his life. He married Linda Gray, a former English beauty queen who had previously been crowned Miss Edinburgh. Linda was admired not only for her striking beauty but also for her intelligence, grace, and supportive nature. From the beginning, Barry and Linda shared a strong connection, and their marriage would go on to become one of the most enduring partnerships in the world of entertainment. Unlike his first marriage, this union provided Barry with a foundation of stability and unwavering support, something that proved invaluable as he and his brothers rose to even greater heights of fame in the 1970s. With the Bee Gees' global dominance, together Barry and Linda built a large and loving family. They were blessed with 5 children, and each of them added joy and richness to their lives. Their first son, Stephen, followed in his father's footsteps and pursued a career in music, becoming a respected guitarist and songwriter in his own right, even performing with his father and uncles on occasion. Their second son, Ashley, chose a quieter path away from the limelight, focusing instead on personal interests and family life. Their third son, Travis, also lived more privately, showing how Barry and Linda's children had the freedom to find their own way without being overshadowed by their father's towering legacy. Their youngest son, Michael, was named in honor of the late pop superstar Michael Jackson, reflecting Barry's friendship and admiration for him. Finally, their only daughter, Alexandra, brought balance to the family, cherished deeply by both Barry and Linda as the youngest and only girl among her four brothers. Throughout the years, Barry often spoke about how important Linda and their children were to him. Despite his demanding schedule as a world-famous musician, songwriter and performer, Barry always emphasized the importance of family, and Linda became his anchor during the turbulent highs and lows of life in the spotlight. Their enduring marriage stood as a rare example in show business of a union that not only lasted but grew stronger with time, providing Barry with the love, loyalty, and grounding that helped him sustain a career spanning more than 6 decades. For decades, Barry Gibb, the last surviving member of the Bee Gees, has carried the weight of both his family's incredible musical legacy and the friendships he built with some of the greatest artists of the 20th century. Among those legendary figures was Roy Orbison, a man whose haunting voice, dark sunglasses, and mysterious presence carved a unique place in rock and roll history. Now at the age of 79, Barry Gibb has opened up in a deeply personal way about what Roy Orbison truly meant to him, not just as a fellow artist, but as a source of inspiration and friendship that shaped his own journey through music. "Roy had one of the most extraordinary voices I have ever heard in my life," Barry said. "It wasn't just singing. It was almost like he was pulling something out of the heavens. You could feel every ounce of pain, joy, and longing in that voice. Nobody could do what Roy could do." Barry Gibb remembers clearly how, as a young man growing up with his brothers Robin and Maurice, the music of Roy Orbison wasn't just popular, it was a revelation. While Elvis Presley lit the spark for many aspiring performers, Orbison's songs like Crying, Only the Lonely, and Oh, Pretty Woman showed Barry and countless others how powerful it could be to pour raw emotion into music. Roy's songs weren't just catchy, they were heartbreaking, Barry recalled. He had this way of singing about loneliness and loss that made you feel like he was telling your own story. I think every artist deep down is always chasing that kind of honesty. But Barry's admiration went beyond the music. He recalls the first time he met Roy Orbison in person, describing it as both surreal and humbling. "Roy was very quiet off stage," Barry explained. "He wasn't one of those larger-than-life personalities when the lights were off. He was gentle, polite, even shy, and then he'd step up to the microphone and suddenly he was a giant. It was like watching a transformation. That always amazed me." Over the years, the Bee Gees and Roy Orbison often crossed paths in the music industry, and Barry said those encounters always left a lasting impression. There was never any ego with Roy. You have to understand, in this business it's very easy for people to get caught up in their own legend. But Roy didn't have to say much. He let his music speak, and in my mind that made him even more powerful. Barry also touched on how Orbison's career had ups and downs, much like the Bee Gees experienced themselves. After dominating the charts in the early 1960s, Roy faced personal tragedies and a period where his music was less commercially successful. But then came the late 1980s, when Orbison found a new audience through collaborations like the Traveling Wilburys, alongside Bob Dylan, Tom Petty, Jeff Lynne, and George Harrison. "Seeing Roy make that comeback was incredible," Barry said. "It was like the world finally caught up with what some of us had known all along, that Roy was timeless. His voice didn't age. His artistry didn't fade. If anything, he grew even more powerful with time." For Barry, watching Roy rise again was both inspiring and bittersweet, especially since Orbison passed away suddenly in 1988 at the age of 52. "I was devastated when I heard the news," Barry admitted. "I felt like the world had lost one of its greatest treasures. And I also felt personally grateful that I had lived in a time when I could hear him sing live, when I could meet him, when I could call him a friend." Looking back now, Barry Gibb reflects on how much of Roy Orbison's influence still lingers in his own music and in the broader world of popular culture. "Every time I walk into a studio, there's a part of me that asks, would Roy approve of this? Would he think this is real? Because Roy never faked anything. That's the legacy he left for all of us." In his final thoughts, Barry summed up his feelings about Orbison in words that were both tender and reverent. "Roy wasn't just a singer. He was an emotion, a spirit, something bigger than all of us. He taught me that music isn't about showing off. It's about truth. And for that, I will always be in his debt. At 79, Barry Gibb's words serve as both a tribute and a confession. After decades of fame, loss, and survival, his admiration for Roy Orbison shines with a clarity that only comes with age. It is the kind of truth that bridges two legacies, one belonging to the man in the dark glasses, and the other to the last surviving brother of the Bee Gees, who still carries the torch of honesty, melody, and memory.